In a world where fortunes rise and fall like shifting sand, and where a person's true worth is tested not in comfort, but in hardship, there lived a man named Salem, a man so poor that even poverty itself seemed to pity him. On the edge of a forgotten village called Wadi al-Rahma stood a crooked hut made of mud, wood, and hope. It was there that Salem lived. The hut was small, its roof leaking in winter, its walls trembling whenever the wind roared through the valley. Yet every dawn, before the first bird sang, and before the sky blushed with light, Salem would rise from his thin mattress, wash in cold water, and stand beneath the stars in prayer. His hands would tremble as he raised them toward heaven. My Lord, he would whisper, I own nothing in this world, but I trust you with everything. That faith was the only treasure he had. Salem was a laborer in the village market. Every day he carried sacks of grain on his back until his shoulders burned and his knees shook. For hours of pain, he earned only a few coins, barely enough for stale bread and a handful of olives. Still, he never complained. He would return home exhausted, smile gently, and thank God for another day survived. But inside that hut lived someone who could no longer bear such a life. His wife, Jamila, was beautiful enough to make men turn their heads, but beauty had never softened her heart. Poverty had poisoned her spirit. She hated the cracked walls, the empty cupboard, and most of all, the husband whose patience she mistook for weakness. Every evening, when Salem returned home drenched in sweat and dust, she would greet him not with kindness, but with contempt. Look at you, she would sneer, a man who works like a beast and still brings home crumbs. Salem would lower his tired eyes. Our provision is written, Jamila, he would say quietly. What is ours will come. But those words only made her angrier. Enough of your sermons, she would shout. Faith doesn't fill an empty stomach. And Salem, with a heart bruised by love and disappointment, would remain silent. Because some wounds are too deep for words. As the years passed, Salem's poverty deepened like a well with no bottom. And just across the valley, wealth towered higher than ever. There lived Abdul Jabbar, Salem's neighbor, a man so rich that people spoke his name with envy. He owned fertile land, endless livestock, and a mansion so grand it cast its shadow over half the village. Every morning, Jamila would walk past that mansion. She would stare at its marble walls, its polished gates, its servants bustling in silk, and every glance fed the hunger growing inside her heart. One morning, desire turned into decision. As Abdul Jabbar stepped out through his gates, Jamila slowed her steps. Then suddenly, she let out a cry and threw herself to the ground. Abdul Jabbar rushed forward. Are you hurt? Jamila looked up at him, her eyes shimmering with false sorrow. No, she said softly, only wounded by fate, for condemning me to a life I never deserved. That was how it began. A glance became a conversation became secret meetings, and secret meetings became betrayal. Every day, after Salem left for work, Jamila would slip away to meet Abdul Jabbar behind the walls of his estate. They spoke in hushed tones, of dreams, of wealth, of escape. While Salem broke his back to keep them alive, the woman he loved was already building a future without him. Then came the night everything shattered. Salem returned home later than usual, his face lit by something rare. Hope. Jamila, he said gently, setting down his worn bag. Tomorrow I'm traveling to the next town. I heard there may be better work there. Perhaps God is opening a door for us. Jamila stared at him and laughed. Not kindly, cruelly. You? she said. "You've had years to open doors. All you've done is drag me into misery." Salem froze. She stepped closer, eyes burning. "I'm tired of this life. Tired of this hut. Tired of you." The words hit harder than any blow. Salem swallowed, his voice barely holding together. "After everything, you would cast me out?" Jamila pointed to the door. "Leave." And so Salem did. He stepped into the cold night carrying only a torn satchel, a crust of bread, and the broken pieces of a life he had tried so hard to hold together. Behind him, the door slammed shut. Ahead of him stretched darkness. He stopped once at the edge of the village and turned back. The little hut, the dirt road, the valley where he had buried years of effort, all of it faded beneath the moonlight. He lifted his eyes to the sky. "My Lord," he whispered, tears slipping down his cheeks, "if this loss is your mercy in disguise, then make me strong enough to endure it." Then he turned and walked into the unknown, not knowing that the road ahead, the road of loneliness, betrayal, and pain, would one day lead him to a destiny greater than he had ever dared to imagine. The first night alone was the hardest. The desert wind clawed at Salem's face as he walked beneath a sky so wide it made him feel smaller than ever. Every step carried him farther from the life he had known, and deeper into a silence that forced him to face his grief. But Salem had long ago learned that pain could either harden a heart or purify it. So instead of cursing his fate, he kept walking. For days, he crossed barren roads and endless plains. The sun burned his skin by day, and the cold gnawed at his bones by night. He slept beneath thorn trees, drank from shallow streams, and survived on scraps of bread that grew harder with each sunrise. Yet even in his hunger, he never let bitterness enter his soul. Each night, before closing his eyes, he would whisper into the darkness, "My Lord, if this road is leading me closer to you, then let my feet never tire." One evening, as the sky bled crimson and gold, Salem reached the outskirts of a distant city called Dar al-Nur. The city was alive with lanterns, merchants, and voices spilling through crowded streets. Salem stood at the gate, dusty and exhausted, staring at a place so different from the village he had left behind. He could have begged. He could have stolen. No one would have known. But Salem was not that man. Instead, he walked into the marketplace and searched for honest work. As fate would have it, a wealthy landowner named Haj Imran was looking for laborers to tend his vast farm beyond the city. Salem stepped forward. "I have strong hands," he said, "and I fear no hard work." Haj Imran studied him carefully. Salem's clothes were torn, and his face was marked by hardship. But there was something in his eyes, something steady and unbroken. "Very well," Haj Imran said. "You begin at dawn." That night, for the first time in weeks, Salem slept beneath a roof. And though the room was small and simple, it felt like mercy. At dawn, Salem began his work. The farm stretched farther than the eye could see. Rows of olive trees, date palms swaying in the wind, and fertile fields glowing beneath the morning sun. Salem worked harder than anyone. He rose before the others to pray, watered trees before sunrise, carried supplies without complaint, and treated every task, no matter how small, as if it were an act of gratitude. Soon, the other workers began to notice. "He never rests," one whispered. "And he never complains," another said. But what truly set Salem apart was not his strength. It was his kindness. He helped the older men lift heavy loads. He shared his food with hungry boys. He spoke gently to everyone, even those who mocked him for his silence. Slowly, people began calling him Sheikh Salem. not because he was a scholar, but because he carried peace wherever he went. Months passed. For the first time in years, Salem felt something he had nearly forgotten: stability. He had a roof, food, dignity, and people who respected him. Hajj Imran came to trust him more than anyone else. One evening, as the two men stood overlooking the fields bathed in sunset light, Hajj Imran asked, "Tell me something, Salem. After all you've endured, how do you still smile?" Salem looked at the horizon. "Because hardship taught me something most people never learn," he said quietly. "And what is that? That peace is not found in having everything. It is found in needing less and trusting more." Hajj Imran stood silent for a long moment. Then he smiled. "You are richer than many kings." From that day on, Salem was no longer treated like a worker. He became like family. But destiny had not finished testing him. Because when life begins to soften, that is often when the sharpest trial appears. One stormy morning, chaos erupted across the estate. A servant came running toward the house, pale and breathless. "The safe!" he shouted. "The master's safe has been robbed." The farm froze. Workers dropped tools. Servants rushed from every corner. Hajj Imran stormed out of his house, fury and disbelief written across his face. "No one leaves this farm," he ordered, "until I know who did this." Fear spread like fire. One by one, workers began accusing each other. Then a voice cut through the noise. It was Mansour, a bitter laborer who had always envied Salem's place in the master's heart. "There's only one man who was near the house last night," Mansour said slowly. All eyes turned. "Salem." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. "Sheikh Salem?" "No. Impossible." Salem stood still, stunned. "I went near the house," he said calmly, "to water the inner garden. Nothing more." Mansour smirked. "Then you won't mind if we search your room?" Salem's heart tightened, not with fear, but sorrow. "Still," he nodded. "Search it." The workers followed Hajj Imran to Salem's small room near the edge of the farm. They opened his chest, and inside, wrapped beneath his folded clothes, was the stolen money. The room fell silent. Salem's breath caught. His hands trembled. "No," he whispered. He looked up, eyes wide with disbelief. "I swear before God, I have never seen that money." But the evidence lay in front of them. Hajj Imran's face was filled not with anger, but heartbreak. "I trusted you," he said quietly. Those words hurt more than the accusation. Salem stepped forward, his voice shaking. "I am innocent." No one spoke. The silence was heavier than judgment. Tears filled Salem's eyes, but his voice remained steady as he lifted his face toward the sky. "My lord, you know what is hidden and what is seen. If I am innocent, then let truth rise, even if the whole world has buried it." Then he turned to Hajj Imran. "If my presence brings doubt into your home, I will leave." Without waiting for an answer, Salem packed his few belongings. The same torn satchel, the same lonely road, the same aching heart. But this time, there was something stronger in him. Not hope, certainty. Because he knew one truth better than anyone. When people fail you, heaven never does.